The automatic doors of the Walmart Supercenter in Mishawaka, Indiana, slid open with a mechanical hiss, letting a gust of brittle November wind sweep across the entryway where an old man stood, his blue greeter's vest hanging loose over a flannel shirt. William Bill Thompson, 80 years old, gripped the edge of a cart corral for balance, his white hair sparse beneath a faded Cubs cap, his hands creased with decades of wear. "Morning, folks, welcome in," he said, voice soft but steady, nodding to a young couple hauling reusable bags. They brushed past, barely glancing his way, their focus on the Black Friday deals plastered across the store's front. Bill adjusted his cap, his hazel eyes catching the gray sky outside, and turned to the next shopper's stooped woman with a walker offering. "Need a cart, ma'am?" She smiled faintly, accepting his help, and he guided it to her with a practiced ease. Inside, the store thrummed with pre-holiday chaos. Carts clattered over scuffed linoleum. Kids darted between aisles, the intercom crackling with calls for cleanup in aisle 6. Bill had been here 6 months, a greeter stationed by the double doors. His job simple. Smile, wave, point folks to the restrooms or the pharmacy. His shift started at dawn, ended at dusk, his folding chair a brief reprieve between the endless stream of faces, some grateful, most indifferent. He'd grown used to it, the rhythm of it, the way his blue vest blended into the background like the sale racks or the flickering fluorescent lights overhead. But not everyone let him fade. Jake Larson, a 23-year-old cashier with a buzz cut and a smirk, leaned against his register 10 feet away, arms crossed over his red polo, watching Bill with the glee of a kid poking a stray dog. "Hey, old man, rough day already," he called, his voice slicing through the din, loud enough to turn heads. Bill glanced over, his smile holding steady, but Jake stepped closer, sneakers squeaking on the floor. "Life must have really screwed you over, huh? 80 years old, stuck waving at people for peanuts? What a failure." A trio of stock boys unloading a pallet nearby, teenagers in baggy jeans snickered, their laughter a sharp jab in the crowded space. Bill straightened his vest, slow and deliberate, his fingers brushing the worn fabric. "Just doing my part, son," he said, calm as ever, then turned back to a hairy dad juggling a toddler, offering, "Need a hand with that, sir?" The taunt hung there, a bar that didn't draw blood, at least not visibly. Bill's face didn't shift, his smile a quiet wall, but inside, a flicker stirred memories of louder rooms, sharper voices, decades he'd buried deep. He'd heard it all before. Jake's jabs, the stock boys' giggles, the pitying looks from moms who'd mutter, "Poor guy, still working at his age." 6 months in, it was routine. The younger crew saw him as a relic, a punchline for their breakroom chats. "Grandpa's at again," LOL they'd text, mocking his slow shuffle, his habit of trading small talk with old-timers about the Colts or the weather, his knack for calming a screaming kid with a grin and a "hang in there, champ." He never bit back, never raised his voice, just nodded, smiled, kept moving. Ellen Harper watched it unfold from her office perch above the floor, a glassed-in box overlooking the registers. At 45, the store manager ran a tight ship-crisp blouse, clipboard in hand, her dark hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun. She'd hired Bill herself, 6 months back, after a quiet interview where he'd shown up with no resume, just a handshake and a low, "I'll take what you've got." She'd seen something, thin, faded photo slipping from his wallet, a glimpse he'd waved off that told her more than his words. Now, her sharp eyes narrowed as Jake's smirk widened, his pathetic, muttered loud enough to carry. She gripped her pen tighter, lips pressing into a thin line, but stayed put. She knew who Bill was, had known from day one, and she waited, letting the kid dig his hole. It wasn't just Jake. The store had a pecking order, unspoken but real. Cashiers like him, stock boys, even the deli crew, all young, all quick to judge. They'd whisper in the break room, tossing glances Bill's way. Why is he even here? Couldn't cut it anywhere else. A girl from produce once asked, half serious, if he'd lost his savings gambling. Others laughed, betting he'd been a janitor his whole life. Bill let it roll off, his days a quiet march. Clock in, greet, clock out, his rusted pickup coughing to life in the lot as he left them to their Snickers. But that Saturday, with the store-packed holiday shoppers elbowing through aisles, cart piled with canned yams and frozen pies, the tension snapped. Jake sauntered over during a lull, his voice rising above the chaos. "Hey, Bill, ever think about retiring?" "Oh, wait, you'd need something worth retiring from." The stock boys howled, a woman with a cart smirked, and a hush rippled through nearby shoppers, eyes flicking to the old man by the doors. Bill paused, mid-greeting, his hand resting on a cart, his cap shadowing his face. For a heartbeat, his eyes sharpened something old, something steel, but then he chuckled, soft and low, the sound swallowed by the crowd. "Guess I like the company, Jake," he said, turning to an elderly couple struggling with bags. "Let me get that to your car, folks." The moment passed, swept away by the holiday rush, but Ellen caught it from above, the flicker, the calm that hid more than it showed. She'd seen it before. That day he'd walked in, his wallet spilling a photo of a younger man in a suit, shaking hands with someone big she hadn't pressed, but she'd known. Jake didn't see, didn't care. His loser tossed over his shoulder as he swaggered back to his lane, the stock boys echoing it like a chant. Upstairs, Ellen's pen scratched a note, her jaw tight. Something was brewing, something Jake and his crew wouldn't laugh off. Bill straightened his vest, the blue fabric creased from hours standing, and greeted the next shopper mom with twins, her hands full. "Welcome in," he said, voice warm, eyes crinkling again. Jake's words lingered, a sting no one else felt, but Bill brushed them off, his smile a shield forged long ago. To them, he was just an old greeter, slow, simple, a nobody past his prime. But that flicker, that quiet, there was a story there, a depth they couldn't touch. Ellen knew, and she waited. Was Bill really the failure they saw, or was something bigger hiding behind that grin? The truth was closer than they'd ever guess, and it had hit like a freight train. The fluorescent lights buzzed over the Mishawaka Walmart's break room, casting a harsh glow on chipped Formica tables and a vending machine that rattled with every quarter. A group of employees sprawled across mismatched chairs, cashiers, stock boys, a girl from deli wiping mustard off her apron, their laughter bouncing off the cinder block walls as the clock ticked toward the end of a late November shift. The old greeter by the doors was the topic again, his blue vest and slow shuffle a running joke that never got old. "He's ought to be, what, 90, one snickered, popping a chip. But he's been waving at carts since the store opened." Another chimed in, "Nah, he's just too broke to quit, sad, really." The chatter paused as Jake Larson pushed through the door, his red cashier's polo wrinkled from a long day, his buzz cut catching the light. At 23, he carried himself like he owned the place shoulders back, smirked sharp though he'd only been here 3 months. He dropped into a chair, kicking his feet up. "You talking about Grandpa Bill again?" he said, voice loud, drawing eyes. "Guy's a fossil 80 years old and still playing doorboy. I'd off myself before ending up like that." The room erupted, laughter spiking, a few nodding like he'd cracked some universal truth. But not everyone joined in. A stocky guy named Pete, 30 and balding, a lifer who'd been stacking shelves since high school, leaned forward, his voice low. "You ever think there's more to him, Jake? I heard something years back from an old manager. Said Bill used to run some big company, like CO level big." The room hushed for a beat. Then Jake barked a laugh, sharp and mean. "What, you buying that crap? A CEO, slumming it at Walmart? Come on, pet a guy's a nobody. Look at him." He waved a hand toward the door, where the old man's silhouette was just visible, greeting a late shopper with that same steady smile. Pete shrugged, chewing his lip. "Just saying what I heard." That was the CETA whisper, a crack in the mockery, but Jake brushed it off, his crew falling back into their snickers. Still, the day shifted after that. Out on the floor, the old greeter moved through his routine, and something stood out, small things, easy to miss if you weren't looking. A woman in a rush dropped her wallet by the carts. Bill scooped it up, calm as you please, and handed it back with a "Take care, ma'am," his tone smooth, professional, like he'd handled worse than a flustered shopper. Later, a kid maybe 5 threw a tantrum over a toy, screaming loud enough to turn heads. Bill knelt, slow but steady, and murmured something about being a big helper, handing the boy a sticker from his vest pocket. The kid stopped, grinned, and the mom mouthed a relieved "thank you." Jake saw it, rolling his eyes from his register. "What's he think this is, a daycare?" he muttered to a stock boy, who chuckled. But then came the Kikera mess in the back, a shipment of canned goods mislogged, leaving the night crew scrambling. Ellen Harper, the 45-year-old manager, stormed out of her office, clipboard in hand, barking, "Who screwed this up?" Before anyone could answer, Bill shuffled over, not fast, but purposeful, glancing at the inventory sheet over her shoulder. "Looks like a coding error. Check the last 3 digits. Should be 472, not 427, he said, voice quiet but sure. Ellen blinked. "Checked. Noted. He's right. Fix it." The crew stared, jaws slack, as Bill shuffled back to his post. No fuss, no fanfare. The tension climbed, whispers spreading. "How'd he know that?" a cashier hissed to Pete, who just shrugged, his big company's story echoing louder. Jake scoffed, louder now. "Lucky guess guy's been here too long, that's all." But doubt flickered. Bill wasn't just some doddering old man. He'd handled that like he'd run a store before, not just stood at its door. The next day, a regular and old guy and a Vietnam vet hat stopped to chat with Bill, their talk drifting to supply chains of all things. "You sound like my old boss," the vet laughed, clapping Bill's shoulder. "Ran a chain back in the 80s sharp as hell." Bill chuckled, deflecting, just picking up bits here and there, but Jake caught it from his lane, his smirk faltering for the first time. That night, alone in his cramped apartment, Jake cracked open his phone, the glow lighting his narrow face. He'd laughed off Pete's story. Bill, a CEO? Ridiculous, but those moments nagged. The wallet, the kid, the inventory fix, that vet's comment. He typed William Thompson into Google, expecting nothing, maybe an obit, a random farmer. The screen loaded, and his breath stopped. Headlines, old articles, a grainy photo. William Thompson, retail titan, steps down after decades leading Thompson stores. A chain, hundreds of locations, thousands of employees, sold off in the 90s for millions. Jake's hand shook, the phone slipping to the couch. "No way," he whispered, staring at the face, younger, suit sharp, but those eyes, that jaw. Bill. Back at Walmart, the old greeter clocked out, his pickup rattling to life in the lot as the crew swapped shifts. Ellen watched from her office, her pen tapping her desk. Known. Hired him anyway. Waited for this. Jake's crew still snickered, oblivious, but Pete's whisper had taken root, and Bill's quiet moves were piling up, too sharp, too sure for a nobody. Jake sat frozen at home, the search results glaring back, a truth he couldn't unsee. The guy he'd mocked, the fossil, the failure wasn't what he seemed, and it was starting to show. What had Jake found? What piece of Bill's past was real, and what did it mean? The kid didn't know yet, but he was about to dig deeper, and it'd shake everything he thought he knew. The hum of a ceiling fan cut through the stillness of a cramped apartment, its blades stirring the stale air as a young man sat hunched on a sagging couch, the blue glow of his phone casting shadows across his stunned face. Outside, Mishawaka's sodium streetlights flickered through a November dusk, painting the Indiana town in muted oranges, but inside, time had stopped. Jake Larson, 23, stared at the screen, his thumb frozen over an article from 1995. William Thompson, retail giant, sells chain for $300 million. The photo, grainy, black and white, showed a man in his 50s, suit crisp, jaw square, eyes sharp with a familiar crinkle. Jake's breath hitched. It was him, Bill. The greeter he'd mocked for months, the old man in the blue vest, was a titan who'd once ruled an empire bigger than Walmart itself. That was to break the moment the world tilted. Jake's mind raced, piecing it together. Thompson stores, a Midwest legend, hundreds of locations, thousands of workers, a name his grandpa used to mention over Sunday pot roast, best damn prices in town. He'd say, Bill had built that, run it, sold it, millions in his pocket, and now he was here, waving at carts in a Mishawaka Walmart for $8 an hour. Jake's stomach churned, the phone slipping to the cushion beside him. Every jab he'd thrown, failure, pathetic loser, echoed back, hollow now, a taunt aimed at a ghost who'd already won life 10 times over. He barely slept, the revelation gnawing at him. Next morning, the Walmart doors hissed open as usual. The holiday rush in full swing, shoppers elbowing through aisles, carts piled with tinsel and frozen pies, but Jake's eyes locked on the greeter from his register. Bill Thompson, 80, stood there, vest creased, cap shadowing his white hair, nodding to a mom with a stroller. "Morning, Miami to hand?" he asked, voice warm, steady, the same as ever. But to Jake, it wasn't the same. That calm wasn't weakness. It was steel, forged in boardrooms and battles Jake couldn't imagine. The stock boys snickered nearby, Grandpa's at it again, but Jake didn't join in, his smirk gone, replaced by a tight-lipped stare. His chest burned, shame creeping up like bile. He'd stood there, day after day, laughing at a man who'd once signed checks with more zeros than Jake's whole life would ever see. Bill didn't flaunt, it didn't need to. Jake saw it now, the way he handled customers, smooth and sure, like he'd trained 1,000 clerks. The inventory fix last week, spotting a glitch no one else caught. That vet's offhand, sharp as hell comment. Pete's whispers level, big wasn't a rumor. It was truth, and Jake had been too smug to listen. He'd mocked a king dressed as a pawn, and the weight of it crushed him. Ellen Harper watched from her office, her 45-year-old frame poised behind the glass, her clipboard idle today. She'd known hired Bill knowing his past, seen it in that faded wallet photo 6 months back. A younger Bill, shaking hands with the governor, a moment he'd brushed off with a long time ago. She'd kept it quiet, let him play his part, but now the kid was waking up. Jake's eyes followed Bill across the floor. No taunts today, just a flicker of something new, confusion, maybe respect. Ellen's lips twitched, a rare half-smile. She'd waited for this, for the crew to see what she'd seen. The shift dragged, Jake's hands fumbling at the register scanning toothpaste, bagging bread, his mind elsewhere. He replayed every insult, every laugh, the way he'd strutted up to Bill like some big shot. 80 years old, and Bill could have bought this store, fired Jake with a nod. Yet he stood there, taking it, smiling through it. Why? Jake didn't get it, we slum it here. Why let punks like him run their mouths? He thought his own life 3 months at Walmart. No plans. Coasting on bravado, and Bill's shadow loomed larger. A mirror he didn't want to face. By noon, he couldn't stand it. He clocked out for lunch, cornering Pete in the break room, voice low. "That stuff about Bill CEO, big company, it's real, isn't it?" Pete nodded, chewing a sandwich. "Told you." Old manager said he was some hotshot retired rich, then popped up here. Weird, right? Jake's jaw tightened. Weird didn't cover it, it was insane. He grabbed his phone, scrolled again, more articles, a Forbes mention from '89, Thompson's vision reshapes retail. Bill had been a legend, a name in textbooks, and Jake had called him a bust to his face. The turning point hit that afternoon. A customer, an older guy, suit frayed, but sharp, stopped by Bill's post, squinting. "You look familiar, Thompson, right? Worked your stores in Indy, 85. Best boss I ever had." Bill chuckled, deflecting. "A lot of Thompsons out there, sir, need a cart?" But the guy pressed, loud enough for Jake to hear from his lane. "No, it's you sold the chain, big news back then. What are you doing here?" Bill's smile held, soft but firm. "Just keeping busy." The man shook his head, grinning, and walked off, leaving Jake staring, his scanner idle mid-beep. He couldn't unsee it now. Bill wasn't a greeter by default. He was something else, something massive, choosing this for reasons Jake couldn't grasp. The stock boys still giggled, oblivious, but Jake's world had flipped. He watched Bill kneel to tie a kid's shoes low. Careful, that smile never fading in. It wasn't pity he felt anymore. It was awe, raw and untested, a kid peering up at a giant he'd kicked without knowing. He'd laughed at Bill yesterday. Today, he couldn't meet his eyes. Ellen caught it from above, her pen tapping her desk. Jake's swagger was gone, replaced by a hunch, a rethink. The old man kept working, oblivious to the shift, greeting a family with a welcome in that carried decades behind it. Jake's shame burned, but a spark lit too. Bill wasn't just some has-been. He was a lesson, and Jake was starting to learn it. What would Jake do with this truth? Swallow it, or face the man he'd wronged? The answer was coming, and it'd change everything. The intercom crackled over the Mishawaka Walmart, a tinny voice calling for a cleanup in aisle 12, But the real noise was the murmur rippling through the staff, a buzz that started at the registers and spread like wildfire across the linoleum floor. It was late November, the store thick with holiday shoppers elbowing for deals, yet the focus had shifted from carts to whispers. You hear about the greeter? Old guy some big shit ran a whole chain. Heads turned toward the double doors where an 80-year-old man stood, his blue vest creased, his white hair peeking from a faded cap, nodding to a customer with that same steady smile. The secret was out, and the air bristled with it. It started with Pete, the stocky shelf stacker, who'd let it slip in the break room after Jake's stunned silence confirmed the Google dive. By midday, the crew was abuzz cashiers craning necks, deli girls gossiping over slicers, even the janitor pausing his mop to mutter, "No way." A bold cashier, 19 and brash, marched up during a lull, her ponytail swinging. "Hey, Bill, is it true? You were like the William Thompson? Big CEO guy." The old man paused, mid-cart, his hazel eyes twinkling under the fluorescence. "I had a title once," he said, voice soft, a chuckle threading through it. "Now I'm just Bill, need help with anything?" She blinked, thrown, then scurried back, the whole floor gaping. That was the crisis, the truth bursting loose, a shock wave no one saw coming. Ellen Harper watched from her office perch, her 45-year-old frame tense behind the glass, her clipboard idle as the store buzzed below. She'd known kept it quiet since hiring him, but now the cat was out and the crew was reeling. The stock boys, once snickering at Grandpa, swapped glances, their laughs dying mid-breath. A deli worker whispered to Pete, "He's richer than all of us we see here." Pete shrugged, "Beats me." But the question hung, heavy and unanswered. Bill just kept greeting, "Morning, sir," welcoming like nothing had changed, though everything had. Jake Larson felt it worst. At 23, he stood at his register, scanner idle, his buzz cut shadowed by a slump he couldn't shake. The kid who'd strutted up to Bill, tossing failure like confetti, now drowned in ivory taunt a boomerang slamming back. He'd laughed at a man who'd built an empire, sold it for millions, a man who could have bought this Walmart and fired him with a flick. Shame gnawed, sharp and relentless. He'd mocked Bill to his face, loud and proud, and now the crew knew he'd been the loudest fool. He couldn't look up, couldn't face the doors where Bill stood, calm as ever, a giant he'd kicked without knowing. The dark turn hit at lunch. Jake slunk to the break room, head down, the chatter around him a blur, Bill's name on every tongue, a replacing scorn. He sank into a chair, staring at his untouched sandwich, the weight of it crushing him. He'd been wrong, dead wrong, and there was no undoing it. The stock boys who'd echoed his jabs now shot him sidelong looks, their snickers aimed at him now. Jake really stepped in it, huh? He clenched his fists, guilt twisting with a flicker of anger at himself, at Bill for not saying anything, at the world for flipping so fast. How do you fix that, laughing a legend, then finding out too late? Ellen saw it from above, her sharp eyes catching Jake's hunch, the crew's shift. She'd waited for this, the moment they'd see Bill for real, but Jake's spiral was sharper than she'd guessed. She'd hired Bill knowing his past, expecting questions, not this storm. Downstairs, a customer, an old woman with a can't stop Bill again, louder now. "I knew you from Thompson's best store ever. Why were you here? Not retired on some beach?" Bill chuckled, deflecting, like the people here better than sand. But the crew heard, their stares lingering. The whispers grew respect, confusion, a mix that thickened the air. Jake couldn't take it. After his shift, he lingered by the time clock, watching Bill clock out slow, steady, pickup keys jangling. He had to know how to fix something, anything. "Hey, Bill," he called, voice cracking, stepping into the lot as dusk settled. Bill turned, cap shadowing his eyes. "Yes, son." Jake swallowed, hands shoved in pockets. "Can I buy you lunch tomorrow? Want to hear you know about you." Bill's smile softened a nod. "Sure, Jake." "Noon work?" Jake nodded back, stunned it was that easy. They sat the next day at a diner off Main, grease thick in the air, Bill sipping coffee, Jake picking at fries. "I used to think I knew my people ran thousands of them," Bill said, voice low, steady. "But I never stood where they stood. Never felt the floor under him. That's why I'm here learning what I missed. Jake stared, fries forgotten. Bill wasn't hiding, wasn't broken and chosen this, a lesson Jake couldn't grasp till now. You're not mad? I was an ass, he mumbled. Bill chuckled. Takes more than words to rattle me, son. You're here now, that's what counts. The storm settled, Jake's guilt easing, a plan forming. Bill's words sank in. Every job, every person mattered. He'd mocked that, missed it, but he could change. Back at Walmart, the crew still buzzed, respect replacing laughs. But Jake felt it deeper a shift he'd carry. Bill kept greeting, Ellen kept watching, and the store hummed on, altered by a truth no one could unhear. What would this change, Jake, the crew, the old man's quiet reign? The fallout wasn't done, and it had hit harder than they thought. The December snow fell soft and steady over Mishawaka, blanketing the Walmart parking lot in a hush that softened the clatter of carts and the hum of holiday traffic. Inside, the store glowed with tinsel and blinking lights. The chaos of Black Friday, giving way to a quieter bustle, shoppers lingered over gift wrap. Kids tugged at parents for candy canes. By the double doors, an old man in a blue vest stood as he had for months, his white hair peeking from a faded cap, his smile warm against the chill seeping through the glass. The crew moved around him, their steps lighter now, their whispers turned to nods, a shift that had settled in since the truth broke. Jake Larson felt it deepest. At 23, he'd walked into his shift that morning with a new weight, not shame. Not anymore, but something earned. He'd spent weeks replaying Bill's words from that diner lunch, learning what I missed, and it had sunk in. Every job had a pulse, a worth he'd been blind to. He'd mocked it, strutted over it, but Bill Lady, a titan-turned-greeter, had shown him otherwise. Today, Ellen Harper called a staff huddle, her 45-year-old voice cutting through the break-room chatter. Bill's got something to say, she said, stepping back, her sharp eyes glinting with a rare pride. The old man shuffled forward, leaning lightly on a chair, his vest creased from a long shift. The crew hushed, stock boys, cashiers, even the deli girl who'd once giggled at Grandpa, all eyes on him. I'm no so anymore, he started, voice low, steady, that smile crinkling his eyes. Haven't been for years. Built a big thing once, ran it, sold it hot, I knew my people. But I didn't not till I stood here, felt the floor with you. Every one of you matters, didn't let anyone tell you different. He paused, glancing at Jake, a nod so slight it barely registered. That's all I've got. The room erupted applause, loud and raw, hands clapping from every corner. Jake stood first, his palms stinging as he clapped hardest, his buzz cut catching the light. No smirk now, just a grin that mirrored Bill's. The stock boys followed, then the cashiers, a wave of sound that drowned the intercom's drone. Ellen crossed her arms, her half-smile breaking into something foolish known, waited, and here it was, Bill's quiet reign, cemented not by titles, but by this. The crew who'd laughed now cheered, a reckoning they'd never scripted. That was the peak Bill's truth, not just revealed, but embraced. Jake lingered after, helping Bill with a cart for an elderly shopper, their silence easy now. You didn't have to take my crap, he said, voice rough. Bill chuckled, adjusting his cap. Didn't bother me. Son, you learned faster than I did back then. Jake nodded, the lesson sticking. Humility wasn't weakness, and work wasn't a ladder to judge from. He'd changed, tossed the snark, started nodding to the janitor, thanking the deli crew, small shifts, but real. Bill saw it, Ellen too, and the store felt it. The days rolled on, snow piling outside, but inside, the vibe held. Bill kept greeting, welcome in, folks, his smile a fixture no one questioned now. The crew swapped respect for their old jab stock boys, asking his take on inventory, cashiers trading stories instead of laughs. Ellen pinned a Team Star badge on his vest one shift, her dry "don't let it go to your head" met with his soft laugh. Customers noticed, two regulars lingered, chatting with Mr. Thompson, a name that spread quiet and sure. Jake watched it all, his register a front row seat to a shift he'd sparked by accident. One evening, clocking out, he caught Bill by the lot, the old pickup rumbling to life. You're something else, you know that, Jake said, hands in pockets against the cold. Bill grinned, Snow dusting his cap. Just an old guy who likes people. Jake nothing fancy. He drove off, taillights fading, leaving Jake with a warmth he hadn't earned but kept. The store hummed behind him. Altered Bill's past a lesson, his present a gift. He wasn't a CEO here, but he'd built something new, and Jake wouldn't forget it. The snow kept falling, softening the edges of a story that had started with a laugh and ended with a cheer. We judge too quick sometimes, Jake might have said, imagining faces beyond the lot. Ever misread someone then get it right? Tell me in the comments. I am listening. Thanks for sticking with this. Hit that like if it got you. Subscribe for more. Next one's going to surprise you. Check it out. Catch you later. He turned back, the doors hissing shut, Bill's smile echoing in the quiet.